All right, I'm Eric Lee with Elite Agent Training, and I have the pleasure today of interviewing Kaydee Nelson Scott. Hold on. All right, we're trying our new buttons on our toys here today. Kaydee, how are you today?
I am wonderful. How are you?
Good. Thanks for joining us here. Tell us a little bit about yourself. How long have you been in real estate? What caused you to pursue this as a career?
All right. I have been going, I believe, 5 or 6 years at this point.
Okay.
I have loved it. It was kind of not planned, but real estate was always my goal. I had gotten married. I had 3 little kids, the oldest being just had turned 1. We had been really trying to get my husband through nursing school and came up against a very unexpected divorce.
Okay.
And so I figured that was the time. Things were not what I planned, and if there was ever a time to be brave, that was it. So I went through school, passed my test on the first try, and have really loved it.
I like that story, actually. This is a plan B for a lot of people. And it's something that a lot of people have thought about doing for a long time. You know, they've entertained the idea, but didn't have the courage to jump and try it. And when there's not a lot left to lose, sometimes that's a good jumping off point.
It's the perfect time, yes.
Yeah, but you've made this work for you. You're one of the top producers in my office. And you're not in a big market. What areas is it that you cover?
You know, I cover Box Elder County. I'm comfortable down to Davis County. I also am licensed in Idaho, so I cover Oneida and Franklin counties there.
Did you know I was born in Malad?
You were.
I was.
I could
Yep.
see myself ending up there someday. I love that area.
I can see myself not ending up there someday, but I love to drive back through that town because it is the only place in the world that I can drive that hasn't changed since I was a kid. It's just amazing, except for my house. My house that I grew up in, my dad built it and it burned down just a couple years ago. So there was a propane tank fire or something, and anyways, it burnt the house down. So now I drive down there and everything else looks the same except for the house, and there's almost nothing recognizable there. But yeah, I've got a lot of, till I was 11 years old, grew up in Malad, Idaho.
It's a good place. My favorite restaurant is there, the Dude Ranch.
Really?
So next time you go back,
I haven't tried that out.
it's the best.
Really?
Best, yes.
Better than Maddox?
Better than Maddox. Let me explain why. So when you order, it's a cafe.
Okay.
If you order a chicken fried steak, it's going to come out the size of your plate. Then they're going to give you an entire loaf of bread and honey and butter. Salad bar's good. Then when you leave, you get a twisted cone. So dessert, a huge meal for about 3 days. You're
Maddox
set.
doesn't give you a twisted cone.
No,
Yeah.
no. Boysenberry and vanilla twist.
I have to whisper that, though, because Maddox is like the religion up here in this
Yes.
area.
Yes. You've got to
So
try
what's it called again?
The Dude Ranch.
The Dude Ranch. I'll have to check that out. Thank
Yeah,
you.
You're welcome.
All right. I love getting into story time with people. Tell me a little bit of a story about your own business. How have you, in less than 5 years, grown this business to where it's at? What is it that you do to differentiate yourself? You know, I mean, obviously, you've got people that like you. They like working with you. What is it about you that adds that extra value that people are calling you and then calling you back?
That really is the best compliment when somebody uses you for a second time or gives referrals.
Yeah.
Why do I think that people choose me? I'm hoping it's because I'm very loyal. If you are one of my clients, I'm going to give you 110% every time. I follow through. One thing I've added to my business that I think is really fun is staging. So I will come in and help stage your home.
Okay.
I love gardening, so I really love to help with curb appeal.
Okay.
And I just really value relationships, and I think that is probably why people choose me.
When you say you help with curb appeal, are you getting in and doing, like getting your hands dirty?
Absolutely. My background is my dad
awesome.
is a farmer.
Okay.
So there's nothing more than I love mowing the lawn, pulling weeds. It's absolute therapy. But just seeing the change from maybe how it started to adding a little curb appeal with flowers or landscaping is really fun for me.
Having grown up in a farming community, there's a special place in my heart for farmers' kids. I was going to say farmers' daughters. That makes me sound weird. But for farmers' kids especially, because they know how to work, right?
It's very true.
From the time that you're tiny, you got your first pair of boots on and you're out there collecting eggs, your very first job. And then you're moving sprinkler pipe and you're working.
Hmm.
And farmers' kids know how to work better than anyone.
And, I really appreciate that my parents taught me that and the way I grew up, because I do think it plays a big part in how I work.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that makes a big difference. And I think a lot of times people in your position almost take it for granted, because when you're surrounded by people like that, that's just the way it is,
Mhm.
And you're like, yeah, this is work. This is what we do. And other people that aren't used to that look at that and think, holy cow, that's insane. How could somebody do all of that, But you just do it.
Mhm.
And you don't realize until you get out of it that you realize I'm actually doing a lot more than a lot of other people are doing. So
I definitely
that's
hope
cool.
that's true, and I think you're absolutely right.
yeah,
Yes.
cool. So where does most of your business come from?
Growing up in Box Elder County, I was very involved in different things, 4-H and FFA, high school rodeo. A lot of my clientele come from people who appreciate the lifestyle and somewhat like the rural feel. They're looking for horse property. I really think it's just friendships and relationships that I've developed.
So when you say developed, what is it you do to develop those? Because I think a lot of us, and I'm one of the guilty ones here, and I don't want to say typical anything, but I'm probably like a typical man. I mean, we talk about my best friends, and I think about my old college friends that I see once every 5 years. I'm like, yeah, that's my good friend. And we'll talk maybe once a year if we're lucky. And so I don't nurture those relationships, but you're developing relationships. What is it you do to maintain and develop these relationships so that they not only know you're in business, but come to you for business?
I really love being involved in our community.
Okay.
So doing volunteer things or service, my kids are very involved in different programs. And I just think the people that I knew and the people that I'm still meeting has been really great.
How do they know that you're in real estate? Like, do you do specific marketing for that? Or are you just talking with them as you're working alongside them? What is it you do?
A lot of talking. So I might share an embarrassing story from real estate. I might tell them a little bit about my day. I think it's just developing good relationships that hopefully that makes them trust me and want to use me.
Okay, so you've piqued my curiosity now. We want to hear an embarrassing story from real estate.
This is prime. The first couple years, in fact, it may have been my first year in real estate, I had another agent, Shelby Palmer, call and say, Kaydee, I need you to show a house for me. She said, the sign's not up yet. It will be up later today, but they're anxious. Can you go show this house? And I said, sure. So I take my client out, who is the most shy client I've ever worked with. And we pull up to the house, we go in, we check it out. There was a locked room. That seemed kind of odd when you're selling your home, but sometimes it happens. We go to leave the house, and about a 19-year-old great big guy is walking into the house, and he lives there. And I said, I'm Kaydee. I'm just showing your house. Thank you for letting us see it. And then I noticed there was a big shop in the back, and I said, do you mind if we walk back and see the shop? And he says, oh, yeah, go ahead. My dad's back there. So we walked back, look at the shop, and I introduced myself, and I said, I'm just here showing the house, thank you for letting us come back. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, well, you're selling your house, right? And he said, no. And so we left so fast.
Just finished showing a home.
It was mortifying for both of us, me and the client.
Yeah.
We did go next door and look at the real house.
So you were just one door off?
One door off. I check addresses much more carefully now. And I don't think I'll make that mistake again.
Yeah, that's one to remember, isn't it?
Yes.
So shifting gears a little bit, what is it that you do to maintain your education and training? This is a always evolving industry, you know, from technology to laws changing, forms are changing constantly. You know, we're constantly updating forms. Our attorneys are updating forms for us to help us avoid pitfalls because they see, being a part of the Board of Realtors, a lot of the lawsuits go to the attention of the Utah Association of Realtors. Their attorneys, they get to look at things, they see what's coming, they say, how could we avoid this? Could we clarify some language? And it's a great help, actually, because these forms aren't available to the public. It's one of the best things that a realtor brings to the table is the legal forms and the knowledge of how to use them. So there's lots of things, you know, from technology to, you know, learning new marketing. You know, like none of this stuff existed when I was a kid, or not even a kid when I started. Of course, it didn't exist when I was a kid. We didn't have computers back then. But yeah, everything's growing and changing. What do you do to stay on top of your training and education?
Legal responsibility is definitely one of my biggest fears because not using the correct form or doing something wrong opens yourself up to a lawsuit. That's one of the protections I love to give my clients is, hey, we need to do this the right way. We need to make sure we're protected here. Staying on top of things, there's so many trainings that we're able to do online. I believe the requirement is about 20 hours every renewal period. And I generally tend to get closer to 80 or 100.
Do you really?
I try really hard because I
Wow.
think it's so important. One thing that I have noticed is, you know, how quickly things do change. I'm trying so hard to get on Snapchat and I just can't do it. My kids love it. I can't. So technology, marketing, everything changes, but the legal responsibility that goes with being an agent is huge.
It is. And it's funny that you say it goes along with being an agent. It goes along with buying and selling homes.
Right.
And when members of the public are doing this themselves, I see so many times. I've even heard people say, well, I can't hire an agent because we want to do things this way. And if an agent's involved, it's against the law. There isn't a special set of laws when agents get involved. It's just agents know the law and they help you try to avoid breaking the law. And so many people don't know that. And it's probably every single week, usually from investors. I get investors doing their creative stuff. They watched a late night infomercial. They went to a training. In fact, just yesterday, and I'm not going to name any names, but I heard an advertisement for an investor program. And they're featuring two speakers. One of those speakers used to be my agent, and he's not my agent any longer. But he did things, I'm not going to say broke the law, but he did things wrong all
Walked
the
a
time.
little close to that.
Yeah, he broke
maybe?
the law, but all the time. And I'm contacting him like, hey, you can't do this. You can't. Oh, I'll change. I'll fix it. And then, like, and he didn't turn anything in, so I wasn't knowing what he was doing. You know, I'd have to hire a private detective to track him around to work because he wasn't reporting things, and that was one of the problems. But he's just doing some crazy. And now he's the featured trainer for this investor program. And so I love a good agent that is plugged into trainings because it is so easy to get sucked into, well, I heard this at this course and they sound yeah, they do sound reputable and they're making a lot of money. Yep. You know, some of the naughtiest people out there make a lot of money until they get caught, you know? So that's not the measure of success, how much money they're making. Are they really doing it right? And taking that time and making that effort to ensure that they're doing it right. So I'm glad that you do that.
Thank you. I really think every time I take a course, every time, whether I learn something new or it's a refresher that maybe had, you know, I had forgotten about, but I learned something from everything. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I just got to I was able to audit the class for the Northern Wasatch Association. I'm on the education committee up there. And so they asked me to audit this class, and it happened to be the mandatory course. So, you know, you're saying 20 hours. There's 18 hours that's required for us, but we've got a few hours of that has to be this mandatory course, right? And this is kind of a new thing. And they've actually just added 2 more hours. From the National Association of Realtors just announced, I think it was last week, that they're adding 2 more required hours every 3-year cycle, I believe, for diversity education, you know, helping make sure that people aren't discriminating illegally, which is, I honestly haven't seen that a lot here,
Uh-huh.
but they say that it's problems elsewhere. So it's good to know. It's good to be aware of,
Mhm.
Anyhow, so yeah, I got to audit this class the other day. It was this mandatory course taught by the UAR attorney, Craig Wagner, and he does such a great job teaching. But it's so fun being in there and hearing the real life stories and and sharing things and experiences and talking about the details and having people share different ways that either people were sued for not understanding or not using the right forms and that's what those guys do, the UARs, Utah Association of Realtors, and I'm telling that for them, you already know. um, but that's what they do is they keep their eye on those things and then they help us avoid those problems, which is a huge asset to the community, I think.
Absolutely.
So, um, in closing, I've got one question that I like to ask everybody. All right. Since this is developed for agents in the training program, what advice would you give to either a brand new agent or an agent that is trying to, maybe they've been licensed, but it's been very passive, kind of a hobby thing. They're doing 1 or 2 deals a year and they decide, you know what, I'm going to take the plunge. I'm going to make this my career. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to an agent in that scenario?
I think the thing that has helped me the most was having a great mentor to start with,
Okay.
to working with a great broker, selecting a good broker, and also being mentored. I think the rate, and I can't remember if it's only 20% of agents are still in business after 2 years,
Yeah.
something along those lines. And I really think if the first couple of years that are a learning curve and you're not associated and working with people who really have your best interest in mind, I can see how easy it would be to fail.
Yeah. No, I think you're 100% right. One of my biggest challenges was I started at a 60-40 split with a different company, meaning that 40% of what I earned went to the company, went to the brokerage. I only got 60% of my commissions. And I didn't get anything for it. I didn't get training. If I had a question for the broker, it was 2 or 3 days before they got back to me. And I was just really just winging it on my own. I remember kind of like stumbling around the office, like, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing? And the top producer there was kind of a jerk. And he's like, what are you going to pay me? I'm like, what do you mean? I said, I don't know what to do. And he says, well, you're my competition. Why should I share with you what I do? And I'm like, okay,
Wow.
this is it. This is tough.
Uh-huh.
And I was hustling, I was working hard, but 8 months in, I'd closed 4 deals. And granted, for a new agent, they thought I was doing great, but I'm barely paying bills. And so at 8 months in, me and Kurt Buckley, who was with the same company at the time,
Uh-huh.
and he's now one of our brokers for equity down in Centerville. Uh, but me and him went and took a class, put it on a credit card because I couldn't afford to actually pay for it.
Uh-huh.
So went on a credit card and I went to a little convention and they said, make business decisions, not emotional decisions. And my first business decision was I approached my broker at the time and I said, could I get a little bit of a higher split? And his response to me was anger. He was mad that I would ask that. And I wasn't asking for, to be competitive with equity or anything like that. Equity was brand new at the time. Nobody had heard of them. I just wanted a little bit better in 60-40. And he got mad at me and told me that if I left, then I owed him money, and I had like $500 in my bank account. I was really in fairly desperate circumstances, and with a new family, young babies, we just spent like 2 weeks in the ICU with a new baby. And anyways, um, his response really caught me by surprise, caught me off guard. And that was the week that I made my first business decision, and I went and joined Equity, and I've been with him for 20 years since. And even then, didn't have any training, didn't have any support. In fact, it was company policy. I don't know if you know this story, but company policy was we could not hire a new agent fresh out of real estate school because we didn't have any way to train them. And the liability that you were talking
Wow.
about, the legal stuff,
Yes.
without training, we didn't want that liability.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to change that, and that's why I created the Elite Agent Training Program that long ago, was because I wanted to be able to hire new agents. I wanted to be able to bring them stuff. And so just from my own experiences and everything, but it's been a long road and it's been fun, but I love your answer that getting training, getting a mentor, it would have been so much easier having somebody that was willing to share with me, because everybody that I ran into even when I asked. And most agents aren't bold enough to ask,
Mm-hmm.
but even when I did, they kind of shut me down. And so having somebody that can say, this is what you do, here's the steps, so you're not just floundering around, throwing money, and back then I didn't have a lot of money to throw around, but, throwing time around, a lot of wasted roads. So thank you. I appreciate that opinion. Any last words?
No, I don't think so.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap for today's episode. We hope you found the discussion valuable. Remember, if you're looking to take your own real estate career to the next level, be sure to visit eliteagenttraining.com for our exclusive training program. It doesn't matter if you're a brand new agent or a veteran in the industry. If you're looking to increase your business, this program will get you there. Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for more valuable insights and tips. Until next time.